world. Today we're going to just answer a simple question. What is EQ? What is it? How do I use it? Why is it important? I get this question a lot with beginners. They want to know what is so important about EQ. It looks kind of intimidating when you pull it up on the screen. So we're just going to go over a few mixed tips with EQ and just kind of explain what it is and how you use it. So I have a beat here that I made right in front of me, and we have a lot of different instruments that we can take a look at and just see what EQ is and everything like that. So first I'm going to play you just a little bit of the song, and then I'll go into how we can use EQ to make things sound completely different or take out frequencies that we don't like. So I'll just play a little bit for you. Okay, so we just have this nice slow groove with all these things coming in, and part of mixing is dealing with how all the instruments sit within the frequencies of the entire song. So what EQ does is it allows you to take a look at and manipulate frequencies. And a frequency is just a pitch at which you hear something. So you don't want too many things in your song to be in the same frequency, or else they'll get in the way of each other, especially if you're going to be adding vocals onto a beat and you're producing a song. You kind of want to keep that in the back of your head of where the vocal's going to sit, what frequency is the singer going to be in, that we want things moved out of the way so that those can be up front. So a few ways we can do this. I can pull up an EQ here. So we'll just pull up on our main bus, we'll just pull up a stock Reaper EQ. You will have one in every DAW that you have here. So over here you can see, and you can see it in my voice now. So every time that I talk, the different frequencies are kicking up. So it says that in my voice, my loudest frequency in my voice appears to be in the 200 to 500 hertz range. So over here, this is the spectrum of human hearing. So a human being can't hear anything under 50 hertz about, and they can't really hear anything over 20 kilohertz. So, I'm sorry, 20,000 hertz. So I know it sounds mathy, but don't worry about numbers. This on the EQ spectrum that you're seeing right here is the only frequencies that a human being can hear. Other animals can hear anything outside of this, but this is for human beings, and human beings are the ones going to be enjoying your music. So what you want to do is look at what frequencies do my voice have that are kind of in the way of other things, and how can I cut and manipulate these frequencies to fit in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the same section of the song, and it'll show you the frequencies that are coming through on the entire song. Not individually, but on the entire song. Some people like to backwards this. They like to start out by listening to all their tracks, and they call it a top-down mix. Some people prefer to do this way. I like to do things individually. Like I'll start with the drums and then I'll go to the bass. But when I'm mixing and EQing, I always make sure that if I do the drums and I have them the way I like it, and I add the bass, I don't turn the drums off. Everything that I add and layer on, I'm EQing that as well, but not turning off the other instruments, because you can get everything perfectly EQ'd exactly the way that it sounds good, and then you unmute and play it all together and it's straight trash. And you don't want that. You want to do it in layers together. So what we're going to do is play the same section of the song with this EQ on the screen so that you'll be able to see what frequencies are going on here. So as you could see, when the hi-hats come in, it's up here in this frequency, and these are our high range frequencies. And when that bass comes in, that kick drum, it goes way up in here. And when the sub bass comes in, it comes about in this range here, and the piano is kind of in the middle here. So those are kind of how the different notes, if you think about low sounding notes, are in the lower frequency, and higher pitched items like hi-hats and S's and a very high vocalist would be up in this range here. So that's kind of how you have to think about your mix. I want all my low stuff to not compete, and I want all my high stuff to not compete, and I want things that are going to be pleasant. And if you have anything over here in this range that's way up spiking, it's going to hurt somebody's ears and it's going to sound unpleasant. If you have anything way in the sub bass range, you have to make sure that it's a nice warm sound and that you have some kind of saturation on it to make sure that people can hear it even when they're playing it on a phone. So those are kind of your frequency realms. So what I'm going to do is start with, we have a kick here and we have a snare here, and we have our hi-hats here. So if we go ahead and start with the drums, so we're going to go over here to the kick, the snare, and the hi-hats, and we want to listen to this and see if there's any frequencies that we don't like that we'd like to trim off. So I have a saturator right now. I have the Abbey Road saturator on this kick drum here. And then I have another EQ on this other kick drum because I have a sub kick and then I have a slap kick. So one's making that boom, 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 and then one's making the hit like that. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn the hi-hats off for now. And we'll just listen to our kick and our snare. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the EQ. So this EQ right here is on my first kick, and you can see that I'm shaving off the low end that people don't hear because that's what creates mud in your mix. So I've boosted the frequencies in this range to give it a little bit more brightness, and I've cut off the low end. So that's what EQ is. It's cutting off this big bass and boosting where the warm frequencies are that sound nice. And that's my sub bass. And then for this one, well, it looks like I got them backwards. The first one was my sub bass. This one is, I'm cutting off way more highs and boosting in this range to give it more of a warm sound here. So if you hear this bass right here, I want it to have that deep hum, like really deep. So what I'm going to do is solo and let you just hear this noise here. And this is without it. With it. So what I did is I warmed it up. I kind of took the slap off and just made it more of a feeling than an instrument. And that's with EQ. So I'll play it one more time with. Without. And that's all EQ is. It's removing frequencies to change the shape of a sound. So you can do a lot with EQ, more than you can do with any plugin, to make sure that everything is kind of out of the way. So if I listen to this with my my sub bass, so let's go pick the chorus sub bass here, which is going to be this one. And my sub bass is EQ'd so that it takes out some of that low end that my kick has. and boost some more of the mid-range frequencies to get out of the way. So when you listen to them together, it sounds like this. Okay, so what I did was I EQ'd it so one is kind of standing out and has like the feeling, and the other one is kind of in that range where the other one isn't. And you want to make sure when you're doing this with your sub basses and your bass and your kick that you're kind of giving room for that. Another way you can do that is using a multiband compressor, but that is a lesson for a different day. For this, we just used EQ. I didn't use any compressors. I just used EQ to get those out of the way. So then another thing that people will always focus on is the way that a snare sounds. So if we go over here to our snare, and we are going to solo our snare hit here. And I also have a secondary snare that I left completely alone as far as EQ. And so if you look at the EQ on this snare, let's pull that up. You're going to see how I can manipulate this one. And I'm going to turn this reverb off just to show you how to manipulate a snare sound. Now let's say I really wanted to boost right here. You can tell the difference between here. So all you're doing is basically by moving these bands around, you can cause things to sound different. That's all EQ is. So if we listen to our kicks, our snare, our hi-hats with our sub bass and our bass. Let's go ahead and put it where it all comes in. You'll notice that I've used things that, so the EQ has a sub bass right here, and I've moved things out of the way so that each instrument has their own realm. So you can hear that kick drum coming in even though you're getting this nice warm bass. So then what I would do next is go in and see how everything else fits. So how does the piano fit in there? We'll go in here and take a look. We have the secondary bass right here with the sub bass and the kick. So we can listen to that, make sure that fits in. I've sweeped it. So I've sweeped this bass because I want it to fit in with another bass, and I want only those wah-wahs to come out. So let me show you how it fits in with the other bass without the EQ and I have a mono modulator on there. So we're just gonna go ahead and play it together without the EQ, and I'll show you the difference. You hear the mud? So before the EQ, I couldn't hear the second bass. It almost disappears. But when I put in the sweep of EQ, the other bass lives and this bass lives in its own frequencies. And then what I did was I put a monomod on this one, which makes the bass go from one side to another. So it actually is modulating the panning away from the EQ of the other one. So if you listen to all three of those together, you'll hear when one comes up, the other one kind of goes down, and then it really makes that bass stand out. Okay, so I got 2 basses in there and a kick, and you can hear everything perfectly, and you can feel it. And then you have the hi-hats, which are in that higher frequency range, which break up that deep bass and give your ears kind of some kind of candy to listen to while they're focusing on that really low end there. And those higher frequencies are good to mix in with your deep sub basses because they just sound pleasant. Now, if I had no sub bass, no bass guitar, and I had a high screeching guitar and lots of distortion and things like that, and I put in these hi-hats with, your ears would be overloaded with high end, and you'd be like, I'm craving a bass because my ears are tired listening. So it's all about that balance. And EQ allows you to have those balances in your mix by manipulating frequencies. That's all you're doing. I know I've said it 100 times, but I really want to get it in there into your brain of what exactly that it does. So if we go down to these, which I named particles. So these 2 I did not EQ, but they're in that mid-range. So I can pull up EQ and you can watch them. So you can see what they look like here. So we'll go in and add those in. And those are going to be my mid-high frequencies, I believe, that are going to also come in and kind of give your ears a break from the sub. So right here. Turn it up. Hear that? So you have that bing, bing, bong, and you can notice when I boost it, how much more pleasant it sounds coming out of that sub. So it's that pleasant mid-range at about 1000K that just really makes your ears have something else to focus on. You have hi-hats kind of delayed on the side, and then you have that beautiful bung, 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 just like to give you a little bit of feeling from all this heavy bass and kick that's going on. So that's another thing that you can do is if you have a really pleasant mid-range or mid-high frequency, you can just boost that up in your mix a little bit and just give the listener that little bit of ear break. All right, and so I have 2 different sounds here with there, and you can hear those in there. So now I have almost all of my sounds from the chorus. Let's see. I do. I have all my sounds on now. So what I did was I started with my kick and my snare and my hi-hats, and then I worked on my bass, and then I worked on any other thing that's in the low frequency. Then I moved it to my mid-highs and made sure that all the EQ blended so that you could hear every single thing. So what I can go ahead and do, just to show you, is turn off all the effects and turn off all the EQ and go ahead and show you the difference with what this sounds like here. So this is with everything turned off. Okay, do you hear how it's really muddy and nothing's really clear and everything's kind of in the way of each other, even with the panning? And then here's the same section with all the EQ and effects on it here. So you can see the difference between just adding a little bit of EQ to move frequencies away from one another has really made the mix sound whole and together. And the best way to learn EQ is to get on here and pick an instrument. You get on your DAW, you pick piano, you pick sub, whatever it is, pull up the EQ. So let's pull one up here. Okay. So you pull up a stock EQ and you just play with it. Move these around. You can also change the bandwidth. So if you wanted this to be, let's say it was 2, you want it to be more of a point, a shape. This is called extracting EQ. So you pull this down, it would pull out these frequencies, which happens a lot in vocals and things like that. So you would pull those out. You can do high pass and low pass. So low pass is anything that pulls out high frequencies. It's kind of like opposite of one another. And a high pass is anything that takes out lower frequencies. It allows the highs to pass through and it allows the lows to pass through. I just remembered it as they're opposite of one another in your brain. High pass means taking out lows, and low pass means taking out highs. And just grab it and turn it up and turn it down and take things out until it sounds good. Now, you want to be careful with EQ because a lot of people will surgically go into an instrument and start pulling out every unpleasant frequency. And you start to get these, like, you'll see an instrument, it'll have like 11 bands of extractive EQ. So if something needs that, if it sounds that upsetting and there's that many frequencies, if you can, record it again. Because what happens is you go in, let's say you go into your kick drum and you pull out every single thing you don't like. Then you move on to the bass and you pull out every single thing that you don't like. What happens is eventually you'll go back to play it all together and you'll go, oh, it's missing this, this, and this. So you go to your master bus and you'll crank everything up or try to add a compressor, makeup gain, or try to add reverb or things like that to get back all the frequencies that you just extracted. So you want to just go easy on it. Do high passes, low passes, small boosts, small surgical EQs on something like a snare drum that has a lot of ring and you want to pull the ring out. You can grab this and, boost, hold it up and boost it as high as you want to get it. And then when you hear it, the frequency, you yank down. That's kind of how you surgically EQ that. So those are great to take out. But if you find that you're going into every instrument and you're surgically removing frequencies, you're just going to end up putting them back in because it's going to sound bad to you. So let instruments be, but make sure that the frequencies aren't interfering with each other. If you have a kick drum that's seriously interfering with the sub bass and you've tried EQ and you've tried some saturation and things to make it kind of stand out, but it's not, maybe choose another kick drum. Choose another sub bass. Choose an 808. And those kind of things, so you're making less work for yourself, especially in production. Pick sounds that work together and pick frequencies that work together. And if you notice that everything in your song is, way up here or way up here, try to go and say, okay, well, maybe I have enough bass. Maybe I have a strong enough kick. Maybe I should add some alternate hi-hats. If you have something that your main snare hit is hitting 10K and that's your noise that's supposed to make the song drive, don't do that, because this is what's going to happen. Someone's listening to your song for 20 seconds and they'll be like, that is a horrible sound and it makes me an easy skip. So you can add high frequencies in where they're appropriate, and just play with it a little bit. And that's the best way that you can get to know EQ, is just by going in there and fiddling with it and play with it and see how the different frequencies interact with each other. Pull up a bass and say, oh, this is cool. I can move this around and cut it around. And you'll do a lot of high passing in a mix most times, because that's where all your mud, you'll hear the term mud sometimes. My mix is muddy. And that's what you heard when I turned off all the EQs that really interfered with each other, and it just kind of sounded wrong. And if I had gone and played that in my car, it would have sounded absolutely horrible. So if you do a lot of that, you go over here and you do a little bit of high passing on each one of your lower instruments, that's what kind of gets that car test that everybody talks about. I went to my car and it sounded bad. If you cut out just about 50 and you boost around 200 in your lows, and you bring down a little bit of your highs, you'll pass the car test every single time. Especially if you every once in a while go in your master bus and kind of do those same things. you'll pass the car test, no problem. So I hope this answered what EQ is and how to use it and how it works in a mix. I know that there's a lot of videos out there that are very confusing and they get very technical and they want to talk so much about the hertz and this and that you're just kind of like, what is it? What does it do? Why is it important? Well, it gets things out of the way. It makes sounds sound good together if used properly. So have fun playing with it. If you have any comments, go ahead and drop them in the comments section, and I will be happy to answer any questions that anyone leaves me. You can also go to denkstudios.com, fill out a contact form, and just say, hey, Jam, I have a question about EQ, and I'll hit you up. So enjoy your week, and I hope you learned something, and have a great day.